Ian de Montfort is a psychic. Started off solely as a spirit medium, but now I consider him to be more of a psychic because he can not only talk to the dead, but also pick up on what people are thinking. He does psychic readings for people. He can predict the future in certain circumstances, so he's also a clairvoyant and a fully trained homeopath. And what I mean by that is he's done a very tiny amount of homeopathic training, almost non-existent. But he did have a swim in the ocean once with another homeopath, so according to him, that makes him one. The ones that have to have the disclaimer to say they're not actually psychics, those ones. Yeah, because that's the law. There are some psychics that are characters like mine that don't claim to be real. And there are others that are forced to say they're not real. You mean those ones? Yeah, not only on a par, I would say this without any sense of arrogance, because it's a necessity. Ian's skills are better, or the demonstrations of his psychic ability is definitely more powerful than anything you would ever go and see in a spiritualist church or in a theatre, simply because the people in my audience, for the most part, don't believe that Ian is real. So for me to convince them anything has happened, it's got to be pretty strong and in their face. Whereas I don't know the exact statistics. You'll have to forgive me for not quoting you exactly the statistics, but about, I think a real psychic, and I'm going to do that, only has to get about 25% right for the audience to go away and think that they have done an amazing thing, because their audience are already believe in the psychic, other than the 3 or 4 blokes on the back row, which they normally get. They're always hilarious to watch. There's always some husbands that have been dragged along and spend the whole hour and a half just going. You know, that moment of what just happened, where you completely win the audience, because for 1 minute they're laughing along and the next minute they're not laughing anymore. And then the challenge of getting them back on side with some jokes as well, because that's not easy. I've not always got it right. In the early days, I was either too, I think my second year Edinburgh show was just too realistic, not funny enough. Certainly according to Dominic Maxwell of the Times, anyway. Oh, he was right. He was actually, I did, and thank God I did, because he was correct. The following year, he said I'd managed to get the balance right. Ian started off with an idea and a concept, which was, you know, to appear to be a spirit medium, and then just as the audience think you can't do it, to flummox them and make it look like you can. That was always going to be the original idea. Spoke to a magician and asked him if it was possible, and he said it was. And so then I started studying how to do it. The voice it needed to be northern and industrial, but not Liverpool, because that would be too obvious. Because there's too many from Liverpool. Well, there's one in particular who I've taken a lot of performance cues from. I won't say who it is. But also there's people like Colin Fry as well that I really watched and studied quite closely. I think, though, that Ian, through time, has become his own man, really. He's not a collection of mannerisms I've copied off other psychics now. Although he was a lot closer to other ones to start off with. But he's got his own thing now.
Yes, yes.
Which always normally happens when you're, creative.
Well, you inhabit the character.
Pardon me. I mean, you look at young comics, and most of them start off by ripping someone off. And the better they get, the more experience they get, the more unique they appear. I'm coughing and crying during this interview.
That's fine. Have we said where we are?
We're somewhere in Wales,
We are in
from what looks to me like 1974. Pretty sure this is 1974 in Wales. And that's not like a cheap joke about Wales either. This is, by anyone's standards, 1974. Because we're not far from Cardiff. We're modern Cardiff.
We're 25 minutes it took us to get here.
Well, that's where they make Doctor Who, so I don't know what happened here. I feel like I've come out of a TARDIS and it's the beginning of an episode. I'm waiting for a Vauxhall Viva to drive past. Yeah, I have. I've managed to get myself, with exactly the same act, and I don't change a word of it, perform to hip clubs in London on the hip comedy circuit. And also I work very closely with, but certainly very frequently with people like Bobby Davro. It's very exciting. I was on the bill the other night with Bucks Fizz, Bobby Davro, Shane Ritchie, and Shakin' Stevens, and it was like the telly I used to watch in the 1980s, but they were all around me. It was amazing, and I don't change a word of the act, not either one of them.
I've seen you in both situations. Yeah, it's the same.
It's the same, yeah.
It's completely different, mind.
Massively different, yeah. They're all laughing at the same thing. It's not like there's one joke actually that tips like a seesaw, where they miss the irony at one of the gigs and they laugh for all the wrong reasons. It would be unfair to call it my Al Murray joke. And no, it would be unfair because I've had that discussion with Al and everyone else. You're not responsible for how your audience reacts to what you do, and you can't be. I'm currently struggling with a new character that's a UKIP MP, a female UKIP MP, and I'm going into that knowing that there's going to be problems if I'm not careful. But equally with Ian de Montfort, it's essentially a sceptical act with its roots in scepticism. But I get people approaching me, asking me if I'll do them private readings.
Have you ever done one?
Oh my good God, no. No. But if I'm getting approached as a comedy psychic, making a whole room of people laugh at my jokes at the expense of psychics, and still getting asked to do private readings for people, then you can see how someone like Al Murray gets the wrong audience, or people laughing at him for the wrong reasons. Because, essentially some people are idiots. I mean, people say a lot of people are idiots, but they're actually not. There's most people are of average intelligence. And then there's like 50% people that are cleverer than them, and then 50% of people more stupid than them. So it's a fairly even distribution from the mean.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact mathematical terms. Yeah, I'm struggling with a new character. Well, I'm not struggling with it, but I am doing Tom, yeah, and I've tried it out. It's not as good as the other two. It's all right, but there are enough stand-up comedians, and there wasn't a gap in the market there for another comic. So there's no need for me to do it, other than the fact that I wanted to do something else. Really, it's kind of more for me than the audience. They're happy with it. They're not getting any complaints, but it's definitely not getting, and never will get, the reaction the psychic has got and the DJ gets. So, but I do it though, and yeah, it's interesting. It's been really difficult to start again, really, in front of my peers and go on stage. I remember I thought I'll do it in New Zealand, where nobody will see me or know me, and so at the Classic in New Zealand, which is the only purpose-built comedy club in New Zealand, I did 5 or 10 minutes of it, and it was dreadful. I mean, it was proper bad. And I came off stage, and in the darkness at the back of the room, I just made out Jared Christmas. And I was like, oh, God, he saw me do that. And then as my eyes adjusted to the light, he was sat next to Jim Moyne, Stephen K. Amos. Just about everybody. Everybody. Flight of the Conchords. They were all just literally like that. I'm not joking either. They were all there. I went, oh, for God's sake. I was there for the International Comedy Festival, so I might have known that's where they all hang out. Oh, it's horrible. But I'm not ashamed of it anymore. But it's just a bit of fun.
So do you find you're playing a character version of yourself, or you're actually yourself?
No, I'm kind of playing myself. I tend to turn my family into characters and then I play them. The hardest part is I have a very funny wife, genuinely in real life, who's kind of got a dual personality. And as I introduce her on stage, is, you know, those girls that are academically really bright, but common sense totally and utterly thick. Well, that's Liesl, but without any of the academic ability. And she is fantastically, she does have this kind of dual personality, and she is, for example, a bit like Carl Pilkington, and she's also did the same job. She's a radio producer, where she played the ditzy sidekick on the radio show, but also was the executive producer. So she lives in this dual world, and also she uses her ditziness to her advantage. She did some wicked and fantastic interviews with people like Lenny Henry, where she completely wound them up. She got banned from every major record label for interviewing pop stars because she wound everybody up. So I wanted to talk about it on stage and really do it justice, but it's been really difficult because the minute you're a stand-up comedian, a male one, saying what is essentially, my wife's so thick, even though I've gone to great lengths to flesh her out, make her three-dimensional, give examples of when she's being wicked and naughty and not stupid, still no one did it in Edinburgh. No one quite came out and went, you're doing my wife's so thick jokes, these are sexist jokes. But the implication was there in the snide way the review was put together. For example, my hair is like this because I do Ian de Montfort, but it could also look like tacky 80s hair. So one reviewer chose to just use the hair to kind of smear the fact that and then mention I was doing my wife material. And it was all very kind of, they were muddy in the water a bit. They didn't quite come out and say I was sexist 80s throwback, but the implication was definitely there. So it's been quite tricksy, but audiences really like it. But I don't think they would even care whether I was actually trying to do her justice or whether she was real or even existed, which she is.
She is real, I've met her.
And she's ditzy, isn't she?
You say on the main show here, she's...
Oh, God, she's in the show.
Yeah, she's carrying a microphone. She's very pregnant.
She's not only carrying a microphone around, but she's carrying my child. And she's very, very funny. I'll give you an example. She interviewed Lenny Henry, who was really grumpy. She'd heard an interview with him that morning on another channel, and that he was sick to death of being asked whether him and Dawn, whether it's a laugh a minute in the house. He went, no, so that was our opening gambit. I know you're sick of that question. He went, oh God, I'm totally sick of the question. You know, why would it be any different from any other household? We're just a normal couple. And when we're not at work, we just, you know, we row and we get on and we behave normally. And she went, yeah, no, I understand that. Bet it's funny though, isn't it? But it is funny though. And he didn't get it. He went, no, and he's getting progressively angrier and angrier. She had to edit it down so it was only about 3 minutes of her going, no, I get that, but breakfast, is that funny? And he'd be getting grouchier and grouchier. And then she'd calm him down and go, no, I understand. What about lunch though, is that funny? So she's a nightmare.